everyone. I'm Rebecca.
I'm Max.
I'm Jen.
And I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to What the Adaptation. We're the show that reviews adaptations from one form to another just for you. Tonight, we continue our series on Lord of the Rings properties. This time, it's Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, episodes 1 and 2. Max, what can you tell us about the episodes? Do you have that?
I do. It was written by John D. Payne and Patrick McKay, both episodes. Directed by J.A. Bayona, I believe both episodes.
Yeah.
Yep. And Exposition.
What were the episodes titled?
A Shadow of the Past and The Drift.
Okay, that's the one that kind of creeped me out.
And they were all about exposition.
Yeah.
Yes, pretty much.
Lots of
We've got this piece, let's put it here. Let's put this piece here, and then we'll move them around.
Yeah.
There's
What do you guys think?
There's no quick summary to just be like, hey, these episodes were about this. Like you just can't do it. There's too many pieces.
It seems that the shadow is rising again, and some people were right and others not, because nobody wants to believe the two women who said the shadow's there. That's episode 1 and 2. Oh, and let's not forget Nori's got something she's got to do that she just knows in her heart she's got to do.
Yeah.
There we go.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, I think I summed up.
Yeah,
first one.
Congratulations. That's it. I appreciate
That's
it,
the whole
guys.
thing.
Have a
See you
good
guys
night.
next week.
Hi.
Welcome if you got them.
So before we dive into the questions, I feel like it's worth just, acknowledging that things are going to be a little different in how we're talking about this adaptation compared to ones we usually do, because usually the source material has a narrative to it, and then they're adapting that narrative. In this case, they're adapting material, but it's not a narrative. It's not in a narrative form. So they don't have a beat for beat story structure to even work with to begin with. And so it's harder to talk about, well, what changes did they make from the source material? But, we will talk about that. But maybe also just looking for, what have they pulled out of the source material to create their narrative. So
it makes me think,
yeah,
the writer's room, they must have been like a bunch of Wheel of Time fans theorizing, picking it, going through with a fine-tooth comb, sifting out every tiny, like, one sentence here that hints at this. And I could just imagine it like, a bunch of Wheel of Time nerds sitting in a room doing that together.
Yeah.
Fitting, I guess.
I can imagine it could be really like, you have all these pieces, and then it's like, well, what can we use from this, and then, how to construct a story out of it. So
well,
pretty interesting.
Top that off, they had to probably have lawyers in the room too.
You gotta wonder, because like, they have the rights to certain materials, but then like, how do you deal with the fact that there's other materials out there that establish and state certain things that they don't have the rights to those things? So what can you say? What can't you say?
How much can you sneak through from the original that you can't actually use?
Yeah, no, and I especially have to wonder because the way this episode starts off with they show a bunch of stuff from the First Age, which is not really so much in the materials they have to work with. So somehow they've been allowed to sort of get a little bit of that First Age stuff in there.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, they do what they have to do, I guess,
Yeah.
He bought the rights to it, and he's got to get something out of it. There is one Wheel of Time person, I don't know if he's a Wheel of Time nerd yet, that I'm pretty sure was working on this show, and that's Wayne Yip. I think that's the same Wayne Yip as Wayne Chi Yip.
Wayne Yip, yep, he is involved in this show as well. That's right.
Yeah, I saw him as an executive producer.
Oh yeah, good
which
eye.
tells me
he must be
probably
directing some episodes too, I think, but I don't know which episode.
A lot of times on TV series, you'll see that directors are listed as something extra on the episodes. They're like regular direct, that are frequently on, will be listed as something else on episodes they didn't direct. Just like writers from like in a writer's room that didn't write on a specific episode, that script, they'll be listed as like co-producer during those episodes they weren't directly involved on. And then on their own episodes, somebody else is listed. So
Yeah. Okay.
sorry,
So
we digress. Max can cut all that out, but I just had to get that off my head. Out of my head.
all right. So I guess we should, just maybe start with, were there changes to the source material that like stuck out to you on your watch of this? Anything that stuck out to you that went, well, this seems like it's a change from the source material, and then we can kind of talk about it.
Glenn already mentioned the Hearthling thing. I was like, oh, okay, that's a little bit different. Like
The
you're seeing
Harfoots?
you're seeing a little bit different. They're not using the actual term hobbit.
Mhm.
Well, Harfoot is a breed of hobbits.
Yeah.
In the Fellowship of the Ring, there are 3 different: the Stores, the Harfoot, and the Valahides. Thank you. I knew it was something like that. And we're only seeing one group. They might not be aware of the other groups that are out there, but they're still, so they might only or even if they still might just be calling themselves a Harfoot. Like somebody in this country might say, I'm an American, it's just, that's the group we happen to be belonging to, but we're all still human. So
yeah, it is interesting. So I think the biggest like source material that they had for anything to do with the Harfoots is just the Concerning Hobbits chapter or prologue, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a prologue.
it's chapter 1.
Is it chapter 1?
I believe so.
Okay. Well,
I could be wrong.
Anyway, that we'll call it a chapter anyway, whether it's a prologue, chapter 1, whatever. So the chapter on Concerning Hobbits, I feel like has the most material that they had to work with as far as that goes. I mean, I think reading that to me suggests the way they're talking about like the history of it is that, talking about hobbits being an ancient people, and then at some point splitting into the different breeds of Harfoots, Stores, and Valahides. But then if you think about where we see hobbits again in the Shire, they're not using those terms anymore, so at that point they're just hobbits, and so it almost, the odd thing to me when I read that chapter is it kind of seems like, okay, they're always hobbits. At some point they sort of split off into these 3 breeds, but then they kind of like merge together again.
Or maybe Harfoot was just the generic first term for them, and Valahides and Stores branched off from that, because they do have hard feet.
Yeah.
Their feet are big, unlike the books, but that's been pretty much standard since the 70s with the brothers Hildebrand.
Yeah.
But I've always assumed hardfoot is where Harfoot comes from.
I thought it was hairy feet, like harefoot.
It could be.
But it could be that, but it
could
could
be
go the other
either.
way too.
It could
So it's
be
just
either.
funny. Yeah, it could be either. Because it's kind of both,
I know.
both hairy and hard and large.
I know Hobbit etymologically, Tolkien claimed, goes back to the term Holbitla, which means hole builder. But I think that's Western, or not, that's Westron in the Lord of the Rings. In real world, I think that's Middle English is what he based Westron on.
So, from what I got from like the LTR wiki, is that the Harfoots are basically the Shire hobbits.
Yeah.
The Gollum comes from the Stewards, who were swamp hobbits.
Yeah.
Which, when you find out his story, makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
Well, they
and
like
then
rivers.
The Valahides are apparently the ones that would live with elves, I guess.
They were friendlier with elves.
Yeah. And they were fairer, which means pale skin, blondish hair, I'm assuming. And so that's one thing I really like seeing for the first time on screen is a hobbit with brown skin.
Yeah.
Which is exactly how they're described. Well, the Harfoots are described in Concerning Hobbits. Specifically, the line is browner of skin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so we get brown skin Harfoots. I was happy. That brings me to a change, and it's not a complaint about a change, but it's a change that I noticed, and it purely is aesthetic. It has nothing else, has no other bearing. Gil-galad had dark hair. My recollection is the only elves to have dark hair were Elrond and his children.
Yeah.
And it was the sign of their father, their human father, the dark hair they got from. So there's that change. I don't mind Gil-galad and other elves not having blonde hair. That doesn't bother me. It's an aesthetic change that they made. And at the same point, I don't have any problem with a black guy being an elf. You know, elves having dark skin. It's just an aesthetic difference from everything that was described in the books to what we get on the show.
Yeah.
Not opposed to it. Matter of fact, I'm quite happy with what we've gotten so far. Except one character. I'll mention that in dislikes because I don't like the performance, but it deals with one of the characters that doesn't look like the way they were described in the books, or the way you would assume they were described in the books. And that's, you know, it's not. I'm not opposed to the change. It's just the question is, are there any changes? And there's aesthetic change that should be there.
Well, I don't know if we're really, I mean, I don't know what you guys think. I don't know if that we're sticking so strictly to likes and dislikes, because I don't know if there's enough, you know, there to do that. But so if you want to mention your, you know, aesthetic change that you didn't like, or performance that you didn't like, you know.
The performance I didn't like was, Gil-galad doesn't seem like an elf. Even giving dark-haired elves, the guy just didn't feel like an elf. He felt too.
I agree with that.
Mannish.
I'm going to have to agree with that.
I could see that actor as a Numenorian, you know, more than.
Yeah, he didn't give me that feeling. All the other elves on screen, even the ones that were in her adventuring party and aren't arguing with Galadriel, definitely gave elf to me. Everyone else, like around in the city, everyone Galadriel spoke with, definitely.
Arda down in the Southlands, you know.
Oh yeah.
One is in love with the human. He was an elf to me.
He was an elf to me, full through and through.
Interesting thing here. Gil-galad is in the Fellowship of the Ring, and he has dark hair.
Really?
You're right. It's in the like the very beginning, like the prologue of the Fellowship, right?
That's what I'm guessing the prologue would be, where it would be is the prologue. I just didn't remember that any one of the ones shown in there was Gil-galad. I mean, obviously it should have been when I think about it, but
they mentioned his genealogy as being a son of Fingon or Fëanor, depending on which book you read. And Fingon the Valiant is
always exact about everything, and if you get it even a tiny bit wrong, you're dead to me. I'm just kidding.
I could tell. I could do the tone was that was awesome.
And you know, it shows here like Fingon, he's an elf of whatever, and it shows his hair is dark. So
really, okay. Well, my belief.
I was literally looking at the LTR wiki the whole time watching both episodes, checking out random stuff because like I've heard about this, but I wanted to read up a little on this, find out what's going on.
Yeah,
I did that a little bit on rewatch because it was
Apart
from I've had a bad assumption my whole life. What'd you say, Jen?
Apart from genealogy or hair color, just speaking about purely acting presence and like, does he convey an elf? Does he like? I really don't vibe with that. Like, it was really weird. Like, it seemed stilted. I am not that the guy was doing a bad job necessarily. It wasn't that. It just that he didn't have the same presence on screen for me. I felt that. I felt like it was trying a little bit.
His feet would definitely sink in the snow.
What does that mean?
Isn't that like Legolas walking across the top of the snow?
Yes.
Yeah, well, that was a book thing they didn't try to convey on screen, did they? Because that's
not on this. Well, I don't know. They didn't really sink deep into snow at all that I noticed. I didn't notice the footprints. I don't think
they really made a thing out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think to look, to be honest.
Yeah. But he defied physics in other ways, so it's okay.
Oh yeah, the whole Oliphant thing. But I was okay with that. It was fun. It was a fun family romp.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't really think like anything about Gil-galad stood out to me as like a change. I mean, I hear what you guys are saying. I think the writing for him as a character is just not I mean, I think that this gets into different questions, but just like the writing for certain characters, I think is strong, and the writing for other characters is not there yet. So I just don't know how much of a character with an arc is Gil-galad going to be. Because so far he's just kind of a, I don't know, he's just kind of there to like set off that plot point, but he's not really a focus. So
I think his whole purpose in this is to die.
No, he doesn't die for thousands.
I mean, yeah, who knows? But yeah, should be around for a long time. If
seems like he's set for death, though. I see what
maybe. Kind of depends on where this lines up in the timeline. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's not entirely clear either. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because and the other thing about that is like, we don't know what their endpoint of this whole narrative is either. And no matter what the endpoint is going to be, they're not going to use Tolkien's timeline because there's like thousands of years in there that they're just not going to do that. So
they have it condensed into one lifetime.
That's what I saw. It was one human lifetime.
Okay.
And for me, I was trying to figure out while watching first two episodes, like, okay, is this before the Rings of Power are distributed or after? And I believe Sauron's dead, but not dead.
It's definitely before the Rings of Power are distributed, I think.
They haven't even been made.
No one even, I don't even think they've been made. And
that's the project Celebrimbor.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Celebrimbor is working on that.
On getting the forge for that. Right.
That was very unclear to me, like what was going on with that. 'Cause it sounded, I couldn't tell if it was before or after.
They're not really showing like, anything to do with the rings so far is like, hey, we're looking at a box and you don't see what's inside the box, So like
that's Mithril, obviously.
I was thinking it was the ring, and I was thinking it was already after they were distributed.
No,
that's where I was kind of like,
no, I don't think so. I don't think that any of them have been made yet, and because Sauron, whatever he's up to, like he's not currently out like trying to win people over with rings. Like no one even knows he's around. Well, one person does.
Well,
given the book lore, he easily could be around. We just don't know it.
Oh yeah, no, I think he is. Yeah,
he's around, and he'll be showing up. Just I guarantee he's not going to be going by, "Hey, I'm Sauron."
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure his name's going to be, what is it, Amitar?
I don't.
Something like that.
The name he told the elves.
Something like that. He's the one that commissioned the elf to make the rings.
Right. I think that makes sense.
Or works with them on all of them but the three.
Yep.
Right. He should have nothing to do with those, but he might have encouraged that.
I think he's the one that taught him how to do it.
Yeah, maybe.
And I had a kind of look and research to find out what people were finding was actually like not book accurate to this.
Yeah.
And apparently Durin is not book accurate.
Not yet. Okay. We don't know that for a fact yet. Until it's shown on screen, it hasn't happened. But go ahead. You can bring up.
It has to do because he. It has to do because he was in the same room as his father.
Oh.
And apparently there's this whole thing about him being a reincarnation of Durin.
That's the problem. Is the dwarves believe that each subsequent Durin was the reincarnation of the previous Durin, which was generation or two or more before. Mm-hmm. They believe. Just because the dwarves believe it to be fact does not mean every Durin is the reincarnation of the previous Durin.
Yeah.
It might. That's what dwarves 5,000 years later believe. This is 5,000 years before Gimli, Son, and Glóin would even say such a thing in there.
Right. Yeah.
Like I said, that's like one of the few things I could find about being book inaccurate. Like even then, I don't have any. And
it hasn't even really come into play yet on the show because they never referred to his father as Durin.
But
the only person named Durin so far on the show.
I think the name, like if you look at like the X-ray and the name of his father, I think he is Durin.
I didn't see a second Durin on the IMDb. I could be wrong. Yeah, I didn't see. I might have missed it.
I'm double checking while I'm talking because
Peter Mullen is King Durin III.
Okay. Yeah. I thought so. Yeah.
It happened.
But but I agree with Glenn. I think that being something that dwarves thousands of years later believe doesn't mean that that is literally what is accurate. So I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interpretation of it,
Yeah.
if anything. But
And you know, like for me, I don't care about that connection.
no, I don't care
So
either.
them making it like this is an explanation for how it happened works for me.
Yeah.
I had
it's
no
not like-
recollection of that Durin reincarnation plot line from Fellowship or whatever.
No,
It's from, I think that's strictly talked about in the appendices with the bloodline.
yeah.
I think they're approaching this adaptation as not to appeal to book purists or people that are interested in following the story whatsoever. I think their approach to the adaptation is, hey, you guys like elves and hobbits and like Gandalf and dwarves and Sauron. Hey, let's make a show about it.
Story.
And I think that's it. That's it. That's the beginning and the end of it. And looking further into it, it gets a whole, becomes a Rorschach of just a blot of what does this mean, and this isn't right, and this is, what do you see here, like, you know what I mean? So it's,
I feel like it's like to really focus too much on this is kind of like missing the point, because you're right, Jen. Like I don't think that's that's not the point, right? The material they have
more like fun, and
you can't just take the appendices and film it. That's not a story. It's not a TV
or maybe their
show.
hands are binded, like y'all were talking about with the lawyers being in the room. Maybe they had no other alternative but to approach it in that manner.
Even if they did have access to the Silmarillion, most of that can't just be filmed.
Yeah.
Because
but they don't.
Very little
my understanding
narrative
is
in there.
they do not have the rights to the Silmarillion, so they just not an option.
Just what comes inside the book that says the Lord of the Rings.
Right, or the Hobbit. They have the Hobbit too. Not that that's.
Oh, they have the Hobbit. Yeah,
they do. Not that that's as relevant, but they do have it.
You know, the only book fan I really want to hear from is Stephen Colbert on this. If you don't know anything about this, I mean, he literally owns Sting, the sword. From the show.
Yeah,
he was invited to be in The Hobbit just because of
he
so much of
the
a fan, and he was in Lake Town. So it was funny. I was a Colbert fan for a long time, so like seeing that, I was extremely excited for. He's a very big nerd. Awesome. People come on and try to like a dual theory with him, and he always wins out most of the time. I shouldn't say always.
Anyway, I feel like all these things we've been talking about, like it's minor stuff, like if anything, right? Like I think it's hard to, in these first couple of episodes, really pinpoint any major thing that is definitely a huge departure from it's all like little fiddly stuff, right? Like, I mean, you can talk about stuff they didn't show, but that's just a matter of them like not showing things. It's not showing something that is a major contradiction.
There's another thing that might just have been me misunderstanding it for like my entire life. The idea that the elves need to be approven or chosen to go west, that they need a permission to travel to Valinor.
That was weird.
I always thought it was an elf's personal choice when they crossed the ocean.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm unclear onto that. I saw that and I was like, a gift.
Yeah,
that was weird. That was okay.
That took me aback a bit. Yeah, it took me back a bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I mean, because I think a lot of the focus that we get on that is basically Elrond and Elrond's children, and that's a different case entirely. We don't really otherwise get a whole lot of plot around that point.
Yeah. I mean, unless the custom changed after a certain time and the elves were just given leave to come back whenever they wanted.
I wondered if it was specifically due to the fact that they're technically still part of a war, because until in that first episode, Gil-galad says basically the war's over. Like, that's why they're there. That's why they're there in Middle Earth. And so maybe that's the difference, because they're there for war that they can't just go back whenever they want.
Gotcha.
But that's a pure speculation on my point.
Yeah.
On my part, I don't know.
That's a good theory. That's a good theory. Like wartime rules, like
yeah, Right.
That's pretty much where I was thinking.
because everybody would go back.
Wouldn't
in
the
that
other,
case.
yeah.
The
Maybe
others
it's
might
like,
go
get me
back
out of
too.
here. We're
Yeah.
all leaving, except Galadriel, of course. Yeah. Okay, so in regards to changes, there's a couple things I wanted to discuss about Galadriel's story. So one thing that is a change from source material is, so Galadriel's brother Finrod is in the source material. He is killed by Sauron. However, he is reincarnated and allowed to return to life in Valinor. This obviously didn't happen here because otherwise Galadriel wouldn't be like in such a rage against Sauron. I mean, I'm assuming this, it's not mentioned. It doesn't
Right.
seem like that would be happening here. And I didn't know if it was sort of like they're sort of combining, because Galadriel also had two other brothers who were also killed, not directly by Sauron, and those brothers are dead. So maybe it's like sort of a merging of all the brothers into one or something. Because there weren't any other brothers mentioned so that's a change. Interestingly, I don't see anybody mentioning that anywhere, which I mean,
I haven't.
people are like, looking to get mad at all kinds of things. So I was kind of surprised that no one was like mentioning that as something to be mad about. I'm not too concerned about it. It's sort of giving Galadriel a story, or a kickoff for her story. It's not just the beginning of it, but for her. So the main thing I wanted to discuss about Galadriel, though, is because the thing that people are mad about is just the idea that she's like, running around with a sword, fighting in that way. Just people feeling like her character is, that she's out of character or doing things that her character wouldn't do. The way I see it is like, people are going off of like what we see of her, how she is at a certain point in time, which is thousands of years after this point in time. And I think there's nothing that says, we don't know enough about what she was doing, right? There's not much written for her. So I mean, we can assume that this didn't happen just because, again, her brother was reincarnated. But beyond that, like, just what her personality would be like, what her goals would be, how she would choose to spend her time. We don't know that stuff. That's not written. So
see, just because it's not in the books that she ever wielded a sword as a warrior, to me doesn't negate the fact that she could have. I mean, it is again 5,000 years later that we see her in Lothlorien. We change over the course of 10 years. A person today is not who they were 10 years ago. For most people, even fully grown adults are not still the same. So why these people would expect somebody to stay the same over thousands of years is beyond me. It's just an utter lack of using the brain power that you, in theory, have.
No imagination.
You're able to sit there and throw a fit online about this. You have the brain power to figure out how that could happen.
Or just, I mean, forget that even. It's just like, you want to tell an interesting story, right? So an interesting story, if you want to tell a story about Galadriel, and by the way, this is something I shared on a video for my other channel, Reading the Pattern. The showrunners and the executive producer, after the New York City premiere, were asked questions. And one of the things they brought up that was sort of like an inspiration for them for telling the story is looking at Galadriel in Fellowship and the moment when Frodo offers her the ring. And so they're asking the questions like, okay, so why specifically was Galadriel so tempted by the ring? How was she able to know basically exactly what would happen if she did accept it? how was she able to refuse, not accept it? And why was this like all such a big deal for her? So those are all questions that they were interested in, you know, in regards to that scene in Fellowship. So that's part of the impetus for this story, is like trying to answer those questions, which I think is super interesting. And basically, it's just not an interesting story to show a static character, a character who doesn't change over millennia. And, you know, at the point that we see her in Fellowship, she's stable in a realm, you know what I mean? Like, she's been doing that for a long time. Things really aren't changing for her at that point. Like, you can't do that. That's not a story. So if you want to tell a story about like how she evolves and how she ends up there, you got to start off someplace else. You got to, you know, you got to pick something, you know, maybe it didn't have to be this, but you had to pick something to tell that kind of story. So just people don't think about that. It's like, that would not be an interesting story to watch. So give me an interesting story, you know?
Yeah, I get what you're saying there. And people are looking to complain about something. And so they latch on to the first thing, even the smallest of things that come to their attention that are differences. And always forgetting that word there, adaptation. Adapt. It's not the same when you start the adaptation as when it ends as an adaptation, you know, being adapted. That process changes it. And it doesn't matter what format you're doing it in. There's always going to be a change.
By definition.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was my rant. So
I think it's more layered of Galadriel, because she is looked upon as a person. Obviously, she's a leader. She's a queen. She's she's never faced, you know, I think somebody that is commanding people should have like a firsthand understanding, like whether it doesn't even matter what your gender is, of what that is like, being put in that position yourself. Also, I feel like it gives more depth to her character, as you would, because she's experienced Middle Earth through a lot of breakings, right?
Yeah.
She's experienced from the beginning, like through the end. So she has to, like, even an elf would have to change slightly as the thousands and thousands of years go on. Obviously she did. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe this is me, but when they show her in the Peter Jackson and she changes, if they're using that, since you said that this is where this is coming from, then it makes more sense. When she changed and her face got a different color and she was like this, didn't she change into armor?
No.
Wasn't she wearing armor? It looked like she had her, I thought her clothes changed, but she still had the white stuff whipping around it. But I
think it was just raggedy
was
clothes.
Was it just a color difference? Okay.
Yeah, it switched to a hardcore green. Everything was green and white.
Armor in that scene, like I thought she had armor underneath, because she was like, "You will have a dark lord," and I think they. No,
I see what you're seeing. It's not.
It's like some sort of. Okay, I thought it was armor.
No, I see it. I could see that. I do.
I never said it. I never talked to anybody about it, because why would I have a conversation about that with anybody? But like, I always thought it was armor. I'm like, oh, okay, because to me they were giving her more like, oh, I could become Sauron, because that's what he wears, right? On the battlefield.
No, I see that. I do.
So they're turning her more, instead of the white frilly gown.
Yeah.
To more of the armored appearance, like Sauron, and then she draws back, and
there's like, a little bit like that. Yeah.
Saying that I have that within me, so that makes, maybe it was just my personal interpretation. This doesn't mean anything, but that's what I've always looked at it. So I'm like, that looks like armor. It looks like you're right. Armored.
I think there's a little bit of that in there.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now, and it clearly looks like she's wearing some kind of breastplate there.
Yeah.
There's
a breastplate.
It's a boob. It's a boob breastplate. It's a booby breastplate. Which
that makes sense to me.
No, it does. And
she's wearing an armor.
Wow, I never noticed that.
And it's definitely the point of it there, as you're saying, is that she's the potential to become a Sauron-like figure. So
where does that come from?
Right, where does that come from? That's the question. So that's like a part of what this show is exploring. So I don't know, that's super interesting. Let's go on. Yes. Next topic. scenery, costumes, props, music, all this stuff. And this is, you can certainly think of this as an adaptation, because if we think about what's been established in the Peter Jackson films, right, that's establishing certain visuals, right? And to some extent, they're potentially adapting that. So what do we think?
Although I haven't seen anything that like exactly matches something we saw in Jackson's film, I wasn't expecting to. This is well before the time period even of the prologue of Fellowship of the Ring. You know, this is still thousands of years before that, and that was 3,000 years before the rest of the movies. So I didn't expect to see too much, you know, directly mirrored. What we saw of Khazad-dûm/Moria could be somewhere on the interior that we didn't see because it was a city, not just like one little cave inside of a mountain. And you know, so we could have seen parts that we wouldn't have seen before, including the gate we went in. I believe that's the South Gate or something like that. That's where Gandalf used to come into Mordor from. And that's not the doors of Durin that we see in Fellowship of the Ring, because that's the other side of the mountain.
Right.
Elf costuming seems consistent. You know, the military stuff isn't completely consistent matchup, but it's not inconsistent. You know, it's not like it couldn't evolve over the course of millennia into what we saw in the prologue of Fellowship of the Ring.
On almost everything, they have pretty free reign. Like, they don't have to match almost anything. Like you said, if they were going to show maybe the exact same doors of Durin or something like that, maybe they want to match it. But if otherwise, I mean, you know, the inside of Khazad-dûm, like, of course it's going to look different. It's in its heyday. It's not being wrecked, you know. And
it was so nice.
I'll say there's also a plot point there too, that it's what, been 20 years since Elrond went back there,
right?
And so much has changed.
And
you know, for the elves, obviously 20 years is like nothing changes in 20 years.
That was yesterday, wasn't it?
It was yesterday. But yeah, no, that was pretty cool actually, that they brought that up. I like that. And
I love the production wise. Everything I've seen has just been just as jaw dropping as I could have hoped.
Everything, totally visually stunning. I'm a little nitpicky about some of the costume choices, not because doesn't look right or it's not pretty or whatever, but like just practicality of some of them was like weird to me. But you know, like it was, the main thing was like when Galadriel and her cohort were like going like up the ice in the mountains and stuff, and I'm like,
the capes.
I'm like, no, it was like, I'm like, why aren't you wearing like warmer layers? Like they're talking about how cold it is and they're struggling with the cold. And I'm like, you're dressed so inappropriately. You're wearing like cold chainmail and wear your warm layers. And they didn't have packs on. And I'm like, did you not bring anything with you? Like, I was just totally baffled by that. But, you know, that's me being nitpicky.
Well, you know, in LOTR lore, you know, dwarves are very stubborn, but they never talk about how stubborn elves are.
I am. I'm sure they are, but they still get cold apparently.
If we're gonna nitpick, I gotta mention, the heck are they doing standing on that long ship,
right,
the entire way across the sundering seas in plate armor and chainmail? Well, maybe I don't know if that was chainmail, because if it was chainmail, it should have been. It was so finely woven, it looked like it had been mithril, and it can't be mithril yet. But they're wearing their plate armor still.
They just stand there.
Standing there. Literally, I don't mean standing figuratively. They literally are standing there. There's nowhere for shelter to rest. It doesn't look like there's no provision. So apparently the ship leaves the Grey Havens and gets to the Valinor in like a less than a day.
I don't know. I mean, like, they kind of made it seem like, getting between Middle Earth and Valinor was just like an afternoon because Galadriel thought she could swim back or something. I just don't know.
That's what I said. I said, you're in the middle of the ocean now, home slice. What are you
If-
gonna do?
If we were to believe like the wiki, Valinor is no longer like a physical place, right?
Well, okay. Fair enough, I suppose.
I do remember that, but
It's
I
like
didn't
she
think
said,
that
"Oh, she
happened
can swim."
until
I
I didn't think
believe
that
She
had
was
happened
swimming.
until
She
much
was swimming,
later.
but yeah.
I want to say it was after Morgoth burned the tree down that, and they started going
Okay.
Middle Earth. That became no longer part of the physical realm.
Yeah. But you still
It's
take
like
a sheep
Avalon.
there. So it's kind of weird.
Feywild.
From the moment the shot with the prow of the boat is going through the water, I was like, oh no, I'm not happy. I'm not gonna like this because I knew she'd have to jump in,
Yeah.
and
right.
I more than a fear of flying in heights, I have a fear of being so far out the ocean I can't see land. But even worse than that is being in the water so far out the ocean I can't see land. Because then I know I'm dead.
Yeah.
Unless
Pretty
you're an
much.
elf, apparently.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Well, you know, when you lose your
And-
glasses, you're not going to see land very well either way.
yeah, true. Well,
So it could be like
reading
it could be like 40 feet away.
I only need them for reading.
Okay.
I'm actually farsighted, so I see things in distance really easy. But yeah, I was nervous, and I'm like, yeah, yeah. And then there was a big old worm. Yeah, that you want to call that a worm? Yeah,
They called it a worm.
yeah. Which is funny because the first story I ever tried writing, I was like fourth, fifth grade, and I was writing a story called Journeys Beyond the Sea. And it was supposed to be a continuation from the end of Lord of the Rings. As every different group that, traveled across the ocean,
Yeah.
it went. Because first, Gandalf had Bilbo and Frodo with him. They went. Years later, Legolas and Gimli, they went together. And then sometime later, I think even Samwise travels across the ocean.
Mhm.
And that was
Yeah.
the story I was writing. And for Legolas and Gimli, they got attacked by a sea serpent.
Hmm.
And then seeing the sea serpent in that ocean was just like, oh, thank you. That makes 12-year-old me
They did
feel
it
kind
just
of
for you,
vindicated.
Glenn.
Yes. Yes.
That has to be
But-
a very comforting feeling. Scary, but comforting at the same time.
That's scary. Oh, that was a scary serpent.
Hmm.
So nitpicks aside, I mean, we all kind of agree, visually pretty stunning, great, awesome,
Yeah.
lovely.
I mean,
including
all the animation. I haven't had a problem
Yeah.
with any of the animation yet.
Yeah.
Very well.
You know,
So
one thing I hadn't really noticed was any of the music in this. So
yeah, I was
I
gonna
know.
I was where I was gonna go next. So what do we think about that? Because I don't love it.
Okay, so
like it.
Howard Shore was supposed to do it. How I saw the beginning of the second episode is when they actually had the intro. The same, I'm like, ooh, we finally get the intro.
Right.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's sand.
Yeah.
It's sand being blown around
It does.
by kind of a very steady, somber, marching
Yeah.
tone,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, that's how it shows.
Rangoli design.
Let's see.
And I look at the Wheel of Time opening with the loom, and I look at the Rings of Power, and I said, no.
I like
You got Game of Thrones. You got, why are you doing this? I was very underwhelmed by the intro. I'm like, if I was just a passing fan and didn't know anything about the story, I would be like, this is $2 billion or
What's
$1
this
billion
about?
or whatever. Like, what? And the music in the background while they were just talking, it was mid. It was pretty good. It was good.
Yeah.
It was good. It was with nothing better or greater.
I'm
body
happy.
music.
I'm really happy with the music. I mean,
Okay. Interesting.
my three favorite living composers are John Williams, who obviously is not doing it, but Howard Shore and Bear McCreary.
Yeah.
Bear McCreary is he's just amazing. I
Yeah.
have yet to listen to anything of his that I didn't like, and this is included.
I guess, yeah, it's hard for me to say. Like, there's nothing I didn't like exactly. It's just, there was nothing that's really like sticking with me. It's not as memorable as I thought it would be. And The parts that kind of stand out the most were just like when they're like ramping up the tension all of a sudden, and then, but those parts are the more generic sounding of the score. I mean, other parts are at least,
Yeah.
a little bit more, distinct, but still not anything that's really sticking with me. So I mean, I don't know.
I'm not going to claim I'm not going to claim it's as good as like say Battlestar Galactica or Caprica or even the Outlander stuff or any of the other stuff he's composed, but it's still better than what I hear in most things I see.
Yeah.
And that includes the movie we reviewed for last week.
Like I said earlier, there's nothing that really stood out to me on the music in this so far.
Yeah, same.
There's some movies you just watch, like this one track just really sticks with you, and nothing so far has really got to that point.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt too. I was expecting more of it to stick and stand out and really like be potent, and it just mostly.
I think by the end of the season we'll find something like that.
Yeah, maybe we will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So dialogue, comments on dialogue. I mean, that was something I, definitely in the Lord of the Rings movies, there's some dialogue that really sticks with me. A little easier task there because they are, again, pulling from a work that has dialogue, some of which is excellent. So on rewatch, I felt like there were some nice lines. Initially, I think there were a couple kind of clunky lines that I was paying attention to, and so it's kind of mixed, I would say.
I like the
I haven't
dialogue.
been bothered by any clunky dialogue. There's one line of dialogue that really should have been in the movie.
Yeah.
Gil-galad, when he was introducing Celeborn to Elrond, really should have said, "How is it you two aren't father and son?"
Because they look alike.
Because they look so much alike.
But you mean Celebrimbor, right? You said Celeborn. I'm just correcting.
Yeah, I meant Celebrimbor.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to say Celebrimbor.
Galadriel's future.
Celebrimbor and Elrond, the two actors, look like they could play father and son.
They do.
Or older version, younger version.
They do. Yeah.
It's just kind of eerie how alike they look.
Yeah, I think the only part that was a little clunky to me was when Finrod, Galadriel's brother, is like telling that story about the rock and that whole thing.
Yeah, it was a little.
I was like,
push.
I don't know. It's not the best metaphor.
I was a little taken back by the idea of elven children being petty, mean little kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
kind of a
I was
novel.
like, what the
Speaking of that
heck,
whole
man?
scene, I'm like, they're acting like goblins.
Yeah, they're acting like human children.
Yeah,
Come on
it was
now.
surprising to see.
I guess that's universal that children are little shits.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Except for yours, Rebecca.
Oh no, they can be. No, they're all kids can really act up, right? I'm not gonna lie, all right? If you say your kid is a perfect angel all the time, no, they
You're full
aren't.
of shit.
They're in real life. Just want to get that.
I'm just gonna blame it because they're all high elves,
Yeah.
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 The
High and
best
mighty.
dialogue I think is with the Harfoots, like with Nori, like and her friend. Like the best banter to me are Nori and her friend.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't speak Firefly.
That was
really
cute. I like that.
And
It
that
was.
was really good dialogue. That was good. And then when they're arguing with each other and they're trying to protect the other little kids to go back, and she's mouthing to her like, Wolf, like we need to go, like they need to go back to from the patch. That was good. That was good dialogue. I'm like, all right, is it?
Arondir needs to
amazing?
learn a better insult than you smell like rotten leaves.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay,
Maybe this is what
Arondir,
elves
yeah,
think
real
of,
good
but-
dig at your friend there.
Yeah.
For me, I like the Elrond, Durin, and Disa interactions
Oh yeah.
dialogue,
Mhm.
and me that just nailed that whole episode.
Yeah, they did good.
But when we first saw Elrond, the only thing I could think is he has a very punchable chin.
He does.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he does.
Yeah,
Kind of does.
You can't.
I liked everything with all the scenes with Durin and Disa. And like I was telling Max earlier, I have no problem with the fact that the dwarf women don't have beards, because it might just be like the fad at the time, the trend in fashion for women to shave, because it hasn't always been the trend in fashion.
A tiny little bit of like sideburn, just a tiny bit. It's very subtle.
Yeah.
It's quite cute.
Yeah.
But men haven't always worn beards, and men don't always all wear beards,
Yes, shaving is
So
a thing.
it might just be a choice these women have at the time to shave their beard.
Mm-hmm. Very possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course,
Just
from a
because they
practical
can
sense,
grow
it's
them
just
does
cheaper.
not mean they have to wear them. So there you have it.
And from a practical end, though, it's cheaper to cast, have a cast without beards.
Yeah, don't make your dwarf women wear beards all the time. That's not nice. All right.
I do like that the dwarf, the designs of the dwarf characters is totally in line with what we saw in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I totally believe that those are dwarves from the same world as all the dwarves we saw in The Hobbit, who all had just very different designs for each and every single one. These dwarves are all very different looking. I like that. I like the design.
I really like their little their helmets. Like that was kind of cool how that did their whole face. It's almost like Byzantine or something like that. Like they drew from. It was very interesting how they drew from that.
Putting a picture in a Discord channel. This would be something the innkeeper would be very interested in. Has to do with Durin's feet.
Yeah, look at those boots.
It almost looks like sandals.
They're
look like
sandal boots. That is making a statement.
I don't know what to feel about that. Like, are those actually his feet? Like cast in metal?
I don't know.
Maybe
that's how they make their shoes. They cast their own feet so that they fit perfectly. I wouldn't.
It makes me think of nipples on a breastplate, though.
Toes on boots. All right, let's move on. So let's talk about our scene or sequence that was most memorable to you, good or bad, I suppose. Your choice.
Oh, we lost.
Good or bad? Well, let's start with bad. And like I was referring to earlier, pretty much everything with her actually in the water. When she's on a boat or even the raft, it's not nearly as bad, but I hated every moment of her in the water. It kind of creeped me out. Like,
But this is because of your personal phobia. It's not like a choice you didn't like.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say probably the choice that I don't know. I'm so mixed on it. So like the choice they had basically of having like Galadriel go on the ship and then jump in was like, I'm like, why would you do that though? Like she knew she didn't want to go to Valinor before she like got on the ship. So why did she get on the ship when she knew she was going to jump off? On the one hand, I liked it for like the very end of the first episode when she sees the light of Valinor and it's like overpowering. I liked that. I think thematically that's nice because light, in that case is not warm and inviting and the things that we think of. It can be as extreme as darkness, which I think thematically fits well for her character, and I like that a lot. But it did make for some like ridiculousness of like her then jumping in the water and like, what's your plan now? And so that whole thing was memorable to me, some in a good way and some in a bad way.
Yeah. I mean, I am bothered by her in the water too, for the fact of like you said, what's your plan now? I mean, that's an awful long ways to be swimming back, and unless they didn't have to go that far before the veil parted for them, maybe I don't know. Maybe it literally was just an afternoon jaunt.
Yeah, I mean, right. I guess to be fair, we don't know. I mean, maybe it is not really measurable in terms of like normal time or space or something like that. So maybe we just cut them some slack. But
and I wonder if those women that were like taking their armor off of them and taking their weapons, are they staying in Valinor?
Yeah, or do they have to
If
travel
so,
back? I don't know. Good
yeah.
question.
And if they are staying there, like, what did they do? What military campaign did they go off on that gets to let them go to Valinor when these elves had to do that to go? So
maybe that's just their job to like transport people back and forth.
Yeah, it might be ferry service.
Did you have a memorable sequence, Max?
A positive memorable sequence.
Oh,
I
fine,
really I really liked everything with Durin. I had
Yeah.
a lot of fun with Durin and especially Disa. She was hilarious. She was just she was perfect.
Especially the scene with the three of them, Elrond, Durin,
Yep.
and Disa. That scene was like
That
just
was
great.
really
I
good.
loved it. Yeah.
I love the part where he's like, "You're not gonna stay here for more than like 5 minutes," and then no,
Overruled.
Staying for
Not staying for dinner.
Staying for dinner. It's like,
I loved all that. It was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that
it was
was
obvious
just
who's in charge of the hearth.
the like three characters like just actually really like interacting and like that's what I want, right? Like I always want to get those character interactions, and that was the best of it. So I love that.
Yeah,
I don't have anything to. So Max, any others that you wanted to add?
Aside from the one that he mentioned with Durin, because I loved all those sequences. I like the Harfoot scenes, especially with maybe Gandalf or Sauron. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm convinced it's Gandalf.
I'm on some kind of a Maiar wizard theory, but not necessarily Gandalf. And
definitely a Maiar of some sort.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I don't think it's Sauron. I will be like really side-eyeing them if that's Sauron.
Yeah, it would make no sense
Would
in
make
ways.
no
Like, why would he return back that way? I don't understand that one.
If he were going to do something like that, like to stage something, like why would he just go hang out with Harfoots? Like none of it makes any sense. That wouldn't make any sense.
And like
it being Gandalf would make absolute sense to me, in large part because it's the Harfoots,
sure,
who are interacting with him.
Yeah,
and
that's what I was
all the
go
wizards.
To me, it makes sense that he would kind of know their origins, so to speak.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that whole thing was definitely memorable for sure. Yeah.
Also explains his old crotchetiness.
Hi, Jen.
She's back.
What the fuck?
Switch this back.
I'm really sorry.
No,
Dude,
that's okay.
I mean, when I'm telling you it cut out the TV, it cut out the modem, it cut out. I had a hard reset everything.
Oh no.
I don't know what happened, bro.
That's
I am
good.
very sorry.
No, that's okay.
Now. I'm like,
you are back just in
The
time.
color is in the house.
I'll immediately.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you have orcs underneath the house suddenly.
That's it.
That's weird. Sorry.
But you're back just in time, Jen. If you want to share with us your most memorable scenes or sequences, either things that stood out in a good way or a bad way, or both.
I don't know if you have touched on it yet on my absence, but I really hope that it's Gandalf that they're showing.
You were just talking about that, yeah.
Okay. So if that is showing how he got acquainted, why he likes the Hobbits so much, and that whole backstory, if they just look into that, because why, I would really appreciate that. That really stuck out. And other than that, that's probably the thing that Chris and I laugh about. I guess the scene that we didn't like. Have we caught that or no? Or
no, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Why would you have your kid still in that house after orcs are in it? Because he's calling her, he's calling to his mom in the very last shot of the end of season 2 or the episode 2, and he's like, "Hi mom, let me just grab something, I'll be right back." And she's like, "Okay," from halfway across the yard as they're all migrating. And I'm
why
like,
were they staying
he's
there?
just in the house? He's still in the house?
Yeah.
He's hanging out in the house when there's the Underground Railroad, they're smuggling orcs and stuff
He needed a place to play with his Sauron toy,
hanging out, and I'm like, that's a big warning sign. There would be nothing that would be like, yeah, I'm going to leave at first light. So you meant you went back to the house and just slept there for the evening? No.
Right.
I'm leaving now.
What are you doing? If you would ever ordained to go back. It would be to grab something and run the heck out, and that's it. Burn it with fire. Like,
right. Even if you're not going to leave because it's dark out, like you stay with other people and you stay awake
get
until
away
you
from
F out of there. Yeah, no,
I mean,
that's a good point.
yeah.
I don't know if you saw the Resident Evil TV series, but they had a similar sequence of events like that, which had a lot of people wondering what was that mother thinking.
Yeah, that made no sense. I'm like, ooh, bad writing on that, guys. You guys need to like,
when you want to talk about what was that mother thinking, let's go to Stranger Things. You see this face like shape try to press its way out of your wall, and you stay in this house.
yeah.
Years later, you're still living in this house? No.
I don't know. That's kind of like
I've been
every
moves.
horror movie ever. Like
That was the 80s. They were latchkey children, so it's okay.
okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah.
You know what I was watching while we were waiting for all this stuff to convert was Brienne of Tarth, and the fact that the Tormund for the red bearded giant guy loved her so much, and all the different times he was in love with her throughout the Game of Thrones. Man, that was good writing. They had good writing for it to a point. I miss that. He's like, the tall woman, you know her? Like, it was so good. Man,
Did you even recognize him on season 2 of The Witcher?
I did recognize him, but I was like, it was so great. I missed it.
I was double checking that Durin wasn't that guy because they kind of look similar to me.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, Owen, what is it? Owen Arthur doesn't look like anything like Durin does at all.
Yeah.
But
so this is good actually, because next up we're supposed to talk about our best and / maybe worst casting choices, acting.
I think Glenn and I have already kind of stated what we think.
Yeah, that's true. So you're anti Gilgalad.
Gilgalad, yeah.
So anti, just kind of like I don't buy it. That's it. That's yeah.
I mean, that's fair. I can't tell if it's him or if it's maybe just the writing for him is not great. But I think that's probably like I can't disagree with that, I guess. But.
I do have 3 acting spotlights or casting. I think it's mostly the acting that I'm praising here. Yeah. Owain Arthur as Durin the Fourth, Prince Durin.
Very good.
He was just a joy.
He was.
I'm really enjoying Robert Aramayo as Elrond. Yeah. Wasn't sure if I would or not just from the trailers and I'd seen, but I'm really liking him. But I really am loving Morgoth Clark as Galadriel.
Yeah,
she does good. She's got the eyes. She's got the whole.
And I knew that DD was the hard TH in Welsh, and she is Welsh, but I double checked it, and that's even how she pronounced it when I saw her introduce herself. That was the word I'm looking for. Words are hard, people. But yeah, Morgoth Clark.
Yeah, those are all good.
Robert Aramayo.
Casting. Yeah.
I really like the guy that plays I probably should look him up, but it's the guy that plays the elf that's in love with a human woman.
Ismael Cruz Cordova.
I like it. I like him. I like his performance. I buy him. I get this. I feel the struggle. Like, he does very well. Like, is he like fun? No, but do you buy him as an acting his part? 100%. 100%. I buy, and I put him on screen, and then the Gilgalad, and there's a little. It was different. It was to me. Yeah.
I like Bronwyn so far, but I haven't really seen as much from her. I can't think of the actress's name offhand. The actor's name offhand.
I have IMDb up, so I can look up the stuff because I don't remember most of the names. Nazanin,
I remember her from what was it?
She is stunning, and I like some of her scenes. Like I definitely like the scene at the end of episode 2 with her where she's just like slamming
Bumping
down
the head down.
Yeah.
She is
what actress is that?
Bronwyn.
What was the actress's name that you looked
up?
it's
I don't know. I'm going to pronounce it badly, but Nazanin Boniadi. I don't know. I'm not actually sure what like her
Homeland. I think it was. She was on a couple seasons of Homeland. She was an analyst that worked at the CIA that was Muslim American and was getting a lot of crap for it.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I mean, I feel like that, casting's pretty strong here. We've mentioned a lot of people. I mean, we have not mentioned Nori though. Markella Kavanaugh. I think she's awesome. I love
She's
her.
adorable as Nori. She's great.
Yeah.
She's really great. The
No,
one picture I saw of her when I looked her up did not look at all like Nori.
she looks very different. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them look pretty different, like in their regular. Even you wouldn't necessarily think like Arendir, because like, I mean, yeah, he's got elf ears and stuff, but like otherwise, like, it's just kind of like his face. But like if you see him like as in his own style, he looks pretty different too. Like they've really like everyone's looking very much in character, different from their normal selves.
Max,
for me, I liked all the ones you already mentioned, the dwarves,
Yeah.
the one elf you just talked about. I liked all the Harfoots.
Yeah.
Like there was more than a single one I disliked for acting or casting.
It's true.
Yeah.
Did it great.
They just did such a good cohesive job of like creating that culture, so like they all kind of have this like vibe with each other.
Yeah.
That's
And then when it comes to Elrond, I'm kind of like split.
Yeah.
I like his acting, but like
Yeah.
if I just saw him, I would not have cast him as Elrond.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's something about that chin. I don't know.
I don't think he was cast in the sense for his looks, and it's nothing against him. It's just that he doesn't look like, they weren't going like, well, this guy kind of looks like Hugo Weaving, let's cast him. That was not in their minds at all. He doesn't look like him at all. This is just, I think it was just purely based on his acting that,
But then if you go with
has a little bit more of a, Kate Blanchett look somewhat.
And like acting style, you have Hugo Weaving in The Fellowship and him, like they're two very different people at this point in time.
Different.
Yeah.
I mean, this one actually he's kind of likable.
Yeah, I gotta say, yeah. See, Max, you didn't call out any non-human actors. Do you have any non-human actors you want to recognize?
I mean, there's always the worm.
Yeah.
It's controversial, apparently, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I think they borrowed it from the set of Dune Part 2. Isn't that one of the worms that they
instead
had?
of a sandworm, it's a water worm or something. But,
I mean, the word that looked over at the Hartfoots did a pretty good job there. Completely missing all of them.
Oh, yeah. My favorite costuming, going into costuming, those guys that had the big, like, elf, or not elf, oh god, elk. Antler things, and they were walking, and they had, like, those big antler things on their back. Bro, that sent my imagination into orbit when I saw that. I'm like, that's so cool. I never seen it in anything. I really love that. It
was a cool image.
It looked like elk wings.
I didn't know what the heck they were doing with it, but it did look
cool.
They were hunters that had collected the antlers back.
I guess that makes sense. They're hunters. Yeah.
It was like, okay, it's barbaric what they did. Yes, okay, that, and it just looked rad. I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. I
remember when that trailer came out, that first image of characters was these two people walking across the crest of a hill with stuff on, and wondering.
Yeah, they picked a couple of randos because they looked awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, what is this? Is this like some creature? I thought that the antler rack, the antlers on their back, when I first saw the trailer the first time, I thought that was part of them.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, until last week, watching the episode, and they're just a couple of guys that have straps to their back. Okay, that makes sense.
Cool. Sorry,
that they're just carrying trophies. Somebody mentioned it. A character earlier, just a few minutes ago, and it reminded me of the one costuming complaint that I have. And it's not that the costume the person in themselves was wearing is the problem. It's the color the costume is on the person there. Blue. That blue dress that Bronwyn was wearing. Yeah. Unless they've got a very different biome in Middle Earth than what we have here on Earth, at that time period, it's super duper 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 expensive to dye anything blue.
Yeah.
Purple is the most, purple and blue are the two most expensive dye colors in history. And only really rich people wore blue and purple because it was so expensive, because the sources of blue pigment are so rare.
Yeah.
And it's or such a hard process to get the pigment out to make a dye out of it. No way would some farm wife or even healer down in the Southlands, aka Mordor, have a blue dress.
Yeah.
At least not if they were sticking to what we've got even remotely in this world. Yes, I know dwarves,
maybe they're
elves,
not.
orcs, trolls, and dragons. I know there's all kinds of other stuff there, but it's just one thing that stood out, and just it was my own cognitive dissonance going on.
Maybe they're doing it to kind of make her stand out, even though it's, obviously maybe not the most accurate, but I will say their costuming choices for that whole village were super weird to me, because I'm like, okay, I get that these people are poor, but like, why don't they have any hygiene? Why is that dude never wearing a shirt?
The butcher? Okay, there you're talking about. Yeah. It's a little weird.
Anyway, I'm like, did you need to go that far? Because I mean, I don't know.
It's a
The
little bit
contrast basically between like the elves, like the chiseled, gorgeous looking elves, and then the like people who look like they live in a like.
I mean, design choice that could be because they're trying to equate them being allies of, was it Morgoth?
Yeah.
That like, filth equals evil. So
maybe. Anyway. Okay, so let's go on to creatures and any other CGI effects, etc. that we are
not a creature, but I like the fireworks, because they have that's what the thing they did kind of nod back to Jackson a little bit with the firework display, with all the creatures and stuff like that. Obviously not the big red roaring dragon or anything, but like they made it like
the more magical fireworks.
Display.
That was interesting to me, because like in the time we're familiar with, like it would seem that Gandalf is like the only source of fireworks in the entire Middle Earth.
Well,
like no one else.
Maybe for the Shire, we don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
we
it's
don't
just
know
not mentioned otherwise.
I know there's an Illuminators Guild that is around in different places all over. There's all sorts of different Illudras. No, I'm playing those a joke. It was a little wheel time thing.
Yeah, I don't know what Gondor does for 4th of July.
It's hard for me to pick a favorite on this, I think, because everything is like so gorgeous.
Sorry, Jen. I made a state of funny and she started laughing while taking a drink.
Okay.
That was great. I don't know what Gondor does for 4th of July. It's Independence Day from England. Okay. That was just really the jokes. Funny.
Okay. We gotta stop crap.
Sorry. Damn those red cloaks. I'm sorry. Cokes. Go ahead.
I'm trying not to laugh.
I'm not anymore. No more. No more laughing.
Just don't look at Glenn.
Don't.
Okay, let's go back. Where were we?
Yeah, so we were just like favorite like CGI basically, or creatures.
The CGI looked great.
I just can't really pick a favorite because everything is so gorgeous. Like everything is so pretty. I just, Khazad-dûm is beautiful.
For me, I love the trees.
Me too.
Yeah.
Both shining and on fire. That was awesome.
Yeah, those are gorgeous. Yeah. Just like right behind you, right, Matt?
That's what I was. I was like, that's what I was.
I thought all the CG was pretty good, except I wasn't super thrilled with the way it looked. I thought it kind of looked a little cheesy. The whole parting of the veil as they're going to Valinor and then it closing back up. It was effective, but I thought it looked a little. I don't know. It seemed a little cheesy to me.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad CG. It was just choices, I guess.
It was a choice you didn't like, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So. Well, let's try to wrap things up with themes here. So, themes that stood out to any of you.
Definitely resource scarcity.
No.
First time we get away from that one in a while.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jen.
just good. It's just a good versus evil. It is so in your face with it. It's like the evil is an unseen threat. The evil is a menace, and good is just essentially begins with the elves and then gets every other race swept up in it, just like evil does. Technically, evil comes from the elves too, because Sauron was an elf. So it's like
it was a Maiar.
Oh, Maiar. Sorry, I apologize. But yeah, it's and then they both, you know, push and pull the other races of Middle Earth into their thing. So it's very heavy-handed good and evil. I mean, there's no more on the nose good and evil story that I can think of than Lord of the Rings or Rings of Power.
It's also a hefty dose of duty with both Galadriel's self-imposed duty of, you know, avenging her brother's death and wiping orcs and, you know, the shadow from Middle Earth, but also duty with Nori. As I mentioned earlier, she felt like this was something she has to do. And she's taken on herself this duty of taking care of Olorun, Mithrandir, you know, and
The stranger.
guiding him to where he's trying to go. And even her first moments we saw with her was her kind of showing duty with taking care of those children. You know, it's part of the job of everybody in the village caravan.
Yeah, and that's a sense that the Harfoots in general have strong duty to each other, that like this is how they survive by
Jen, you were starting to say something.
No, I just like the whole, again, dialogue thing when she's like, mind your fire, like that when it was a little bit little bossy. It was kind of like great. I enjoyed that very much. Sorry, just dialogue choices, but yes, I agree with what Rebecca is saying. Yeah,
Max.
Friendship.
Yeah,
Friendship. I mean, we saw friendship between Galadriel and Elrond. And Elrond, I guess he's the one who has all the friends.
Elrond has all the friends. Everybody else doesn't have any friends.
Yeah, apparently.
Although Elrond never sees his friends because he hasn't seen Galadriel
in forever.
Years, so anyway.
So and obviously we know he hasn't seen Durin in 20 years. I mean, shoot, even I don't go that long between seeing a friend.
Max, did you have any themes you wanted to add?
I did. I was trying to remember what one was. The first one that came to mind is, you know, aside from good and evil and all that, was basically tangentially related to that, and it's basically the slow corruption that's going to eventually happen. And, you know, if the rings aren't out yet, then that's going to be the biggest plot point or theme is corruption over time. And it kind of reminds me of, you know, I doubt either of you have read the latest Dritz novels by R.A. Salvatore.
No, I haven't. I stopped. It's been a while, though. I enjoyed them immensely. There
was a segment in the last, I think, 3 books back about the basically slow corruption and having conscience and the little evils over time building up over thousands of years, and you go from a society of effectively good elves to evil elves. And it's just these tiny little evils, like, you know, I'm just gonna run that red light today, and then tomorrow it's murder after 1,000 years.
I'll pick up this spear this one time to fight off those guys attacking our caravan.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I have to steal that food this one time, or I have to do something for myself over society. And, you know, from what's going to happen to Khazad-dûm, I can never remember the name of the Dwarven city we just saw. Khazad-dûm. What eventually is going to happen there, what we see with the other dwarves in the Hobbit movie, there's going to be a pervasive theme of this corruption.
Yeah.
The other one I was thinking about was with the Harfoots and prophecy. There is some sort of prophecy thing they're doing with their guiding on the stars in the book they have. That's much more than just like a farmer's almanac. It's almost like it's literally the future, and they have a book somehow. And things are not going right.
Yeah,
that makes sense. I hadn't thought of that book that way, but yeah,
that's true. The good insight.
And when it comes to the corruption, you're talking about people of different types becoming corrupt. The show also has corruption on the idea of people staying corrupt from what their ancestors 1,000 years ago were like. At least so the elves believe. Most of the elves think that the humans of this area are bad just because their ancestors were 1,000 years ago.
But I think it maybe is too early to tell whether that is accurate or not.
Not all of them. At least one of them doesn't seem to be an evil person.
Yeah, well, Bronwyn. It's hard to say about anybody else.
Yeah, but there's at least one that proving she's not what her ancestors were.
Yes, right. She, I think it's fair to say is, not, displaying any signs of that. Anybody else is questionable at this point, but, but then the question would be like, well, it's not a question really, but like, if she's showing that, like, she is not going in that same direction, then it somewhat disproves that theory is like that you're bound to, right? Like there's always another choice to be made.
Yeah.
Well, say, does that go against Tolkien's works or not?
I think it's too early to tell, but so the other thing that stood out to me as far as somewhat related theme, I brought this up before, this is specifically with Galadriel. At the very beginning, she's like struggling with like, okay, well, how do I know what is the true light that I should be following, right, versus a reflection? And then we find out that her brother's telling her basically, you have to sometimes touch the darkness to really be able to distinguish. So and so I think also when you see her turning away from Valinor, the light as she sees it is almost like painful in its intensity. Like it's not inviting, and maybe that's just because she's not ready to go there, but it just can show that the light can be perhaps as intense or extreme as the darkness could be. Like maybe either extreme has its potential downside. So I don't know. It's a little early still, but I just saw that I felt like the way they showed the light of Valinor for her at that point, it was repelling, not inviting in its intensity.
A minor theme I just think about was the cruelty that we saw, especially with the children in the boat.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Sorry,
because
my cat is going crazy. Go ahead. That's she moved my thing, my little go ahead.
This way.
So go ahead.
It's like a very deliberate choice. Like they didn't have to show that, but they chose to. So that's a very interesting choice. Yeah.
There was something else I just thought of, and then I blanked with them a second ago.
Yeah. I mean, we do have some instances of cruelty with the outpost kind of being disbanded. And it's almost like they're doing like a rebuilding effort, and then they just like, we're done.
Yeah, we're out of here. Yeah.
Here's a theme that I haven't brought up in a really long time. Racism. Some blatant racism going on.
That's a heavy theme. Yeah, and they really
and
are
elves towards humans. The elves, the elves that are interacting with humans, or that are around the humans, I should say. So like the people Arondir works with, they don't seem to have a fair view of humans at all. At least humans in this area. So even if it is,
then lots of racism towards elves also.
Yeah, knife ears. That's a new one I had never heard.
Yeah,
never heard.
And it wasn't just limited to because I thought, okay, like in that specific instance with the village, and they have the elves like right nearby, stationed nearby. I can kind of understand where the animosity can develop in a situation like that, because have a poor village, and then you have this sort of like outside military force basically. That's sort of unconnected to them, but like they're interacting with them. Like those two groups having animosity towards each other like makes sense. But it's obviously going beyond that, because like the way Galadriel is treated when she like shows up like in the ocean and these people on the raft and they're like immediately like most of them want nothing to do with her. And as soon as they like, you know, one of them like, you know, pulls out her ear and, you know, like that whole thing there, I think the whole point of that was just to show anti-elf racism.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why even do that bit? Like you could just start with it just being Halbrand and not, you'd skip that whole part.
And the lady who
put that
pulled
in
her
there
on
specifically to show that
Yeah.
that it's not just like limited to like this like small village situation. This is like a broader thing.
and to make it even more painful and how strong the racism there, it's the compassionate woman who helped her onto the raft in the first place, that the moment her ears are seen,
she's like, liar,
you lied to us, you're a liar. And then as soon as the serpent's being spotted coming back, she led it right to us and shoves her into the water.
yeah, that was
It's
wild.
like
what, because like what did she lie about? She didn't say anything of her. Was lying just like covering her ears so they didn't immediately know she was an elf?
Yeah.
I mean, what did she lie about? Yeah, that was
Wait
wild.
a minute. I'm the only one here not having my ears covered with hair.
Are you saying we're all elves?
You might be.
Elf check.
Elf check.
Elf check. Elf check.
no.
Also,
Dirty rabbit.
between elves and dwarves, of course, that's just like an overlying theme. Like
Yeah.
as soon as like, oh, your elf friend, like you saw that, like
Yeah.
Yeah,
straight away.
during the
elves and
third
dwarves.
had a bit of an attitude problem,
Yeah.
you know, towards an elf.
Yeah. Yeah.
I seem to recall in the books, I always found it funny that the reason dwarves and elves hated each other was because dwarves were technically first.
Yeah.
And the
then
elves
go
did not
back to
like that.
sleep. Yeah, Durin was the first living being to walk in the face of Arda, except maybe Town Bombadil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you know, the hobbits might have been there first and no one noticed.
Hobbits are from men. No, hobbits just are descended from men. It's pretty sure. They're the
Well-
same. They're related. We know that.
Are they descended though? I don't know if they're descended. I think
they're related. We know that they're from the same lineage. Essentially, was I think how it's put.
Are you going
Well, I
the
don't know.
hominid route?
Tolkien said hobbits were an ancient people that had gone unnoticed for a long time. So I'm just saying, maybe they were first.
And it's
and
in
no
that
one-
same chapter that he connects them to humans.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but I don't think they're descended from humans, just more closely related.
Descended from the same thing we're descended from. So I guess.
I mean, I don't think it's specified either way, I
Yeah.
guess. That's the point. Okay.
So, do we have anything else, you guys?
I don't
Anything?
think
Any
so.
last comments, thoughts about this show?
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to continuing to watch more of this.
Me too.
Me too.
For true.
I want to
Yes.
see more Ents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
I
saw
was
some of
happy to
that.
see an end.
How about some Entwives?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Definitely.
I have to see an Ent wife argument.
And I have to
Yeah.
see how you could tell the difference between an ent and an ent wife.
I would like to see an Entwife argument
Hey.
as well.
The descriptions were very clear. So I'm just saying, you know.
I genuinely would. Yeah,
I mean,
that'd be entertaining.
I
You
just don't
would
wanna
like to
no
see that?
boobs on a
Yes.
tree.
I would.
That's an affirmative. Yes.
Well, thank you guys for this wonderful discussion tonight. I hope you guys at home enjoyed the show. Come back next week as we do episode 3. Max, do you have a title for that one yet for us?
It's titled episode 3.
It's episode 3.
Episode
Yeah.
3. So come back next week as we discuss episode 3 of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power from Amazon Prime Video. Thanks for watching. Please leave us a like, subscribe, click that bell, get alerts when we put out more videos, and don't forget to be awesome.